everyone, and thank you for joining us today. We're in week 3 of the Hearthstone Collegiate Training Grounds. I'm Nathan Zamora, and joining me today is Kong Shu. And Kong, these guys are fighting it out for $50,000 in scholarships. How would you like to have had that when you were in university?
Oh, man, I was just going to say, I watched this Tespa video, first time seeing it. It's actually pretty touching to me. I wish I had this experience in college because back when I was in school, they didn't have this stuff. Not really. And it sounds pretty cool.
Yeah, it's awesome that Tespa has so many chapters all over so many universities. But if this is your first time joining us, let's talk about the rules for today's event and exactly how these players will be playing. They are split up into 4 different regions, teams of 3 players who will be collaborating with each other. In order to make it to the playoff stage, they'll be playing 6 weeks of Swiss, and teams need a 4-2 or better record in order to get to the single elimination playoff stage. From there, we will crown a champion of each region, where they will advance to a LAN finals and compete for $50,000 in scholarships.
That's a lot of Chipotle. That's a lot of burritos. that's my college life. So.
It's a lot of books too. It's like 4 of them.
4 books or 5,000 burritos.
It's one of those too. Even though they'll be playing in teams of 3 players, it is Conquest pretty much as you know it. Each week, the teams are going to submit 4 unique classes. Then from there, they will self-ban away one of their own classes. That particular choice will not be played for the series. And then they will play a best-of-5 match where in order to win the series, they'll need to win a game with each of their decks.
Yeah, I actually love this self-ban format. You know, it allows you to bring some crazy stuff. You can always just bring one crazy deck. As long as you don't go to 2, you can always self-ban it. And if, you know, you just find yourself wanting to play this deck, or you find your opponent's decks line up well for it, you can bring out some crazy stuff. That's what I like about this format.
Yeah, we saw some crazy stuff over the weekend, even in a non-self-ban. Frozen did choose to bring Priest to the America's Last Call Invitational, where it was a little bit shaky for him and didn't quite work out. But, you know, sometimes that's just the way it's going to be. So let's take a look at the schedule and exactly how that's going to be played. 3 matches today. It's Baylor University taking on the University of Georgia up first, then the University of California. Los Angeles is going to fight it out versus the University of California Davis, where we'll round out the day with the University of California San Diego taking on the University of Washington. So there you can see 3 more matches slated for tomorrow as well. But these regions, they're coming from the south, where we can take a look and see how the standings have been shaping up. And there you can see it. Teams starting to get off to those 2-0 records. And right away, Texas with 3 teams in the mix. Strifeco, you and I are both from Texas.
Yeah, exactly. Texas is my school in college, so kind of rooting for those teams. It's cool that they have 3 teams. Texas is actually really into esports.
Yeah, it definitely is. Tespa is actually the flagship chapter. Was at the University of Texas in Austin. So awesome to see that going on. But wow, I mean, just what a day we have in front of us. The teams at this point, any team that gets to a 3-0 or better record is 75% of the way to making it to that playoff stage, which is it's got to be a good feeling.
Pretty close. All you need is 4 wins to get it to the finals. So these matches are really important today because once you win today, you'll have 3 wins. Just need 1 more, 75% of the way there. And you have 4 matches to win 1 game. So you have to feel pretty good after
today. Should be pretty easy pickings from that point. But you guys can show your school spirit and let us know who you're supporting on this one. You can visit us on Facebook, or you can tweet at Team Tespa. And perhaps you're looking to play in one of these seasons in the future. If you want more information on that, you can visit tespa.org. So, first match, of course, Baylor versus Georgia. This one is bound to be a good one. We did see Baylor compete last week on the broadcast, where last week they brought Discard Lock, Tempo Mage, Dragon Warrior, and Midrange Shaman. Looking like it could be the same thing here, but against University of Georgia, last week they had brought Control Warrior, they brought Freeze Mage, Midrange Hunter, and Midrange Shaman. It looks like they've swapped it up a bit.
Yeah, it actually seems like Georgia's lineup is a little bit favored against Baylor's lineup. There is a Freeze Mage, very good against a lot of these minion board-based decks, and actually Baylor's Warrior is not actually a Control Warrior, it's a Dragon Warrior. This is kind of like a relic of the past, and even though Dragon Warrior is probably still pretty good against Freeze Mage, since you do have the armor up, it's not on the same level as something.
Yeah, let's take a look at Baylor University a little bit more closely. Solix, Such is Life, which always looks like Sushi's Life to me, and Fresh, who is always looking so. Sports, sponsorship, and sales, biology, finance and accounting being the majors. Typically we see a lot of Hearthstone players with computer degrees. These guys kind of all over the place.
They need to. They have a pretty wide variety of majors here. That's actually pretty cool.
Yep. Three guys
it's nice to see esports bringing people together.
It's awesome. Last week they had a fourth person somewhere in the background. Didn't know who he was, never got a word. Let's take a look at the University of Georgia a little bit more closely. J Feather GG, DD4 Falcons, and Bush Doggy, computer science, chemistry, and environmental engineering.
Okay. More the classic majors.
Yep. Environmental engineer. That guy, he looks like an environmental engineer.
What is that? What is environmental engineering?
It's I think it's like safety protocols where you design standards and look out for. I think that's what it is.
Okay.
So I don't think it's like changing the climate or anything like that. It's one of those people that can be involved in those global warming hoaxes.
I like their setup. They seem to be pretty comfortable, all chilling on the couch.
Yeah, and that's a lot of what this is about. When you have to focus for this amount of time, it's so important to be comfortable and composed and making sure you don't have all these outside distractions really getting to you, because at the end of the day, you need to focus. A few weeks of Hearthstone plus one LAN finals and the playoffs, that could get you some serious cash in terms of your scholarship. So it's pretty important for these guys to be 100%.
Yeah, and as we all know, it's very easy to make one misplay in Hearthstone and just lose because of that. So, every turn has to be thought out very meticulously.
Yep. There you can see the bans. Baylor has chosen to ban away their own mage, where the University of Georgia has chosen to get rid of their own druid. And I don't know about you, Strife, but getting rid of my own druid that's never what I'm doing. That class is top notch.
These classes are all pretty good though, right? I mean, shaman, warrior, mage, they're good classes.
I definitely think so.
They didn't ban away their own mage even though there's a warrior. I wonder if they know that it might not be a control warrior.
Well, that was part about it. They were on the broadcast last week, and so if you expect Baylor to bring the same thing here, which is Dragon Warrior, I don't think it's that bad of an idea to go ahead and let the Freeze Mage rip. I think it can struggle with Dragon Warrior at times, but that's a matchup you certainly can win a lot easier than if it was Justicar and Ironforge portals and just all sorts of crazy stuff.
You can see the light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes against the control where you don't even see the light.
The fourth guy's appeared again.
Is that cheating?
I
mean, you have more brain power.
He's just watching. That happened last week too. It wasn't that guy either. It was just somebody who's interested.
The new people every time.
So cool.
Okay, so this is so this is Control Warrior against Dragon Warrior here. University of Georgia playing the Control Warrior. They have the Fire War Axe, and I think that's very important because if both people curve out well, the Control Warrior has an advantage because your mana curve is higher. You're not as likely to curve out, but if you can actually curve out like this, you can kind of keep up early, and then you have the late game advantage.
Yeah, Fiery Warhawks does a good job at shutting down the early threats that Dragon Warrior wants to throw onto the board. And kind of, you hit the right tone there, where if both classes curve out, the Control Warrior typically has an advantage. And it's because its tools work against what Baylor's plan is, where Baylor's plan is to get stuff on the board and hope it goes uncontested. They have a few tools in here that are directed at making sure that their minions won't be engaged in combat and instead will push damage. Against Control Warrior, those tools are pretty much useless.
Yeah, exactly. So if you look at the Fire War Axe from the Dragon Warrior's perspective from Baylor, their axes aren't really targeting anything other than maybe face, but that's not important to have early. It's still nice to have a Fire War Axe early to contest the random minions like Acolyte of Pain and some people use Blood Tigers. But ultimately they're trying to kill all your minions, and your Fire War Axes aren't really recurring damage. So
yeah, this is a strong opening hand from Baylor, though. I mean, Alex draws a champion Fairy Dragon, 12 damage in reserve with the Fiery War Axes, and an Azure Drake to kind of reload the gas. These are some pretty hot draws at the start.
Yeah, I mean, I think they tanked the whole turn to think about which one to drop. I don't actually think it makes that much difference which dragon comes out here. I tend to prefer the Fairy Dragon first, just because it's I guess it's pretty much the same thing, except this is more flexible in your hand a little bit. But
I think there's very little value to be said in the information side, where if you play the Fairy Dragon first and then Alex draws as champion, your opponent knows you have another dragon. Where if you play Alex draws as champion first and then you follow it with Fairy Dragon, that might have been your other dragon. I think there's a little bit of possibility for that.
Yeah, you get the hype.
there is also a nominal risk to this. You know, say Georgia had Blood to Ichor in this spot. You can't Blood to Ichor a Fairy Dragon.
Oh,
it can't
yeah,
be targeted.
you're right.
But you can Blood to Ichor an Alex Strauss as champion. You could also slam this and set up for Ravaging Ghoul. So there are some costs that come with that information conceal, but I feel like the information conceal doesn't really hold a lot of weight here. I think I would have liked to see Fairy Dragon first.
Yeah, me too. This is actually weaker to all the things you said, and Fairy Dragon doesn't really have any downsides of playing it first. It's actually the exact same thing against Fire War Axe, because either way it kills both your early drops, and you actually do the same amount of damage as well.
Now, the other thing to consider is how it lines up versus Bash, where Alex Strauss' champion can very easily be bashed if you go Fairy Dragon and Alex Strauss' champion. If you go Alex Strauss' champion and a Fairy Dragon, and Bash is your opponent's answer, and they don't have the Fiery War Axe, Fairy Dragon is much harder to deal with. And in the event they do have Fiery War Axe, it means that they have to use it rather than Bash. So that is an important facet, I think.
Yeah, I guess. I mean, I feel like if they actually don't have the Fire War Axe and you play Alex Strauss' champion first and then you play Fairy Dragon, it can still get bashed.
Sure.
Turn 3 because it's still going to be there. So
it does take away Slam and Blood to Ichor. A really interesting spot. That's kind of just a small example of a lot of things that go into Hearthstone, too. As simple of a thing like that. It is only one of two decisions, but the reasoning behind it is what's going to make a call correct or incorrect, not the actual play itself.
Yeah, exactly.
And Baylor here taking the full time on this and will eventually decide to Fiery War Axe equip and swing away. Now, typically, I do want to talk about their team dynamic a little bit here because it's a little different than Georgia's. For Baylor, it's mostly a democracy. They discuss all their options and then take a vote on it. Where for University of Georgia, they have players who kind of specialize in stuff. DD4 Falcons is the warrior expert on this team, and so he's the one driving most of the decisions made with this particular class.
Oh, that sounds like an interesting strategy. You have kind of one person specializing in each of these classes, and he kind of takes over the final decision in each of these games. And that's a good thing to do, because a lot of times when it's more of a democracy, what happens is you only have a mid and 30 seconds in every turn in Hearthstone, and if you end up just talking about it too much and no one's kind of making the final decision, a lot of times, as you saw last turn, the rope hits, and this is a turn 2. I guess it was kind of a simpler turn, that last turn there.
I don't know if it was, honestly. I mean, the decision to equip in a Fiery War Axe and hold it versus swing versus Fairy Dragon versus nothing, those are all very real things to think about.
Yeah.
Those are not simple things when your opponent already has a Fiery War Axe in play. And University of Georgia just going with the Acolyte of Pain here. Not too much on the horizon for them. Just kind of get the card draw going. Find the tools you need to answer the mid to late stages, because that's where Baylor's really going to win the game, is if they can start pushing through threats. If they find themselves in a spot where they're trying to go toe-to-toe and things are getting answered all in a row, that's not a winning situation.
Yeah. So Baylor actually decides to go for the Fairy Dragon this turn, Fire War Axe last turn in the face. I feel like it's kind of poor ordering, because if you're going to play Fairy Dragon here, I feel like you might as well have played on turn 2 instead of, the Fire War Axe, and then because Baylor wants to bait out the charge for the Corcoran, right? But this way, the risk here is because the last turn Fire War Axe attacked face, now University of Georgia is going to have the removal on this Fairy Dragon, and then they're going to have another minion here. So then you start falling behind it as a Dragon warrior against a Control warrior, because now you're playing, Corcoran Elite into maybe perhaps a board this time.
Some of that had to do with the fact that they actually swung with the Fiery War Axe as well.
Yeah.
I personally didn't like the swing, because if you look at their curve, their turn 4 and 5 are pretty set in stone. If they don't draw a 4 or less costing card on turn 6, that second Fiery War Axe is not coming down soon unless they want to forego development.
Yeah, so now it's like this is a one-turn tempo where they're behind. Actually could see maybe maybe even equipping a second Fire War Axe here instead of the Fairy Dragon, but this at least kills the weapon charge. I'd like to see an Acolyte of Pain come down here.
Ooh, choosing to armor up instead. That is awfully interesting. 2 points of health is very rarely worth development.
Especially in a tempo matchup like this.
Right, and so this Corcoran Elite is going to force a bash, and then Georgia's going to have to forego another turn of development because of that. So we'll see if this ends up panning out for them. They do pick up Slam, which will allow Ravaging Ghoul if they so please. And honestly, I think that's a blessing, because Baylor's rolling straight into either Azure Drake or into another Alex Straz's champion. If they didn't have something down to try to contest, this could have been lights out.
Yeah, Georgia doesn't really have great reads on what Baylor's hand is, other than the fact that there might not be a 3-drop like Frothing Berserker. There is a move here like Slam plus Ravaging Ghoul. That way you don't have the Acolyte Ghoul combo. The only problem with that is you're kind of losing the Acolyte Ghoul value and the fact that you're potentially dropping this straight into the Blackwing Corruptor turn 5, which is there's generally no target there. So that's not a great thing, but they might think that it's just this, since this is normally a tempo match, if you want to always take the tempo line in as the control warrior, it's still a very reasonable move. Yeah. Regardless.
Stripping away the Blackwing Corruptor for value does have a lot of other unintended consequences, though, like Blackwing Corruptor to face, and that's also not a very kind situation for the most part. Baylor picks up Nizos first mate and kind of a weak draw. In this situation, I think I'd like to see them get the first mate out, but I don't really know how much impact it's going to have. At this point, that card is basically just a 1/1. I wonder if there's more value of it being in hand to threaten something than there is with it being a 1/1 on board.
I don't think that it would be more value in hand just to kind of, just to threaten like another card. But yeah, I mean, you can play Nizos first and then override the weapon with Fireworks.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm leaning with this. But Azure Drake does look appealing here as well. The problem is that strips a dragon from your hand, so that it doesn't activate Alex Straz's champion. They're going to choose to hold on to the Nizos first mate, and this is an important turn. If that damage at some point becomes relevant, that's something to note. But also, there is consideration for Brawl. If you place 2 minions alongside this, you don't have Nizos first mate kind of being one of the very poor outcomes from Brawl at that point.
Yeah, I mean, I doubt Brawl would come from these 2 minions this turn anyways, but yeah, I definitely prefer this over Azure Drake. I feel like Azure Drake, you're kind of just getting yourself into the scenario where now you're kind of playing from behind again. Your weapons are very high tempo moves, because weapons, you can kill a minion and still have a weapon left over.
Wow, they're going to go for the armor up again and hold on to the Acolyte. This is really curious. I don't think I've ever seen someone play quite this passively.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't be playing this passive against the faster decks. There is also something to note, like on the turn 5, their play of playing out the 3/3. It does kind of help a little bit against Blackwing Corruptor in the sense that Blackwing Corruptor would have taken them below 15 for Draken Crusher. But
yeah, they ended up getting there anyway. Yeah. I mean, there was really very few ways to play around Draken Crusher, and I think they just got the note here that's not in Baylor's hand. I think Draconid Crusher was a very easy turn for Baylor if they'd had it. They chose to go with Azure Drake instead. So University of Georgia, I think, can pick up some read potential from this and know that their hand is probably somewhere close to what it is. I think they can assume there's a really high threat or an execute on that left card slot, because that's been there for a very long time at this point. And so University of Georgia needs to find a way to fight against that. And to me, that's looking like Justicar Shield Slam.
I like Elise Shield Slam better. Elise's body is a lot better here against the Fire Warax. And if you're playing Grom next turn, you don't have armor, you don't have mana to get the tank up anyways. And you can even get double tank up on turn 10 with Justicar. So in the sense that this is definitely a weaker tempo move in the sense that your minion's easier to get killed, and you're not really using the tank up any turn immediately. So I definitely do like Elise armor up a little bit more than this move.
The way that they've been playing it, I'm not so certain about that. The way that they've been playing it seems like that tank up is really on the menu. They've gone the Acolyte multiple times.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, though, even if you played Elise and armored, you can still play Justicar and tank up next turn.
It's definitely true.
So, and you have a minion that can potentially start trading, especially with the slam, too.
Yeah, it's a good point. Blackwing Corruptor gets drawn, but there's no longer a dragon, and that was the cost of that Azure Drake that turn, was now suddenly Blackwing Corruptor looks a lot worse, and Baylor's quickly beginning to get caught with their hand in the cookie jar here, playing a little bit aggressive, fast, and early. And a couple turns of swinging wrong with a Fiery War Axe, I think, is coming to cost them a little bit.
Yeah, Baylor should be able to make the read that there is no Harrison Jones in University of Georgia's hand. So I would kind of prefer to see something like Fierce Monkey attack Nizal's first mate and the armor up here.
What do you think of Slam there, just to cycle? Because you're rolling into Ragnaros next turn anyway. I think I'd like to see them pick up something to follow up with.
But then after Rag, you'll have 9 man. Then you can cycle a Slam that turn and still have, like, use the Slam as for value. Yeah, exactly. Okay. So I don't really. I don't really like that Cyclone Slam this turn, but I think I do like the Fierce Monkey plus N'Zoth's First Mate a lot more. Your minion's a little bit weaker in the sense, but actually it's not really right because you still have 5 power on board if you count the 3/4 plus 1 plus the weapon. It's still 5 damage. Plus you can just have this dragon effect for later.
Yep. I think that's actually a really good point to make, is that they've given up the Blackwing Corruptor as well.
Yeah, and you should have the read that there's probably no Harrison Jones on your Georgia side, because those Harrisons would have come down to axe those turns.
Oh yeah, definitely would have. So Baylor kind of playing it a little bit more liberally with the resources. And University of Georgia, I feel their play is just, it's got to be Grom is by far their strongest play this turn.
Yeah. Mana efficiency goes, it's very nice as well. Not too much other ways to get great mana efficiency here.
Oh my. Well, that's a reason to save Slam. Honestly, the Ragnaros here is looking great. It's got 2 fantastic targets. If it hits face, Georgia drops to 10. If it hits the Grom, you have Ragnaros out still. This is the turn for that.
I agree that Ragnaros is the best play, but I would strongly feel uncomfortable if I hit face here, especially after the Justicar has been played. The face damage can be made up fairly quick with tank up, and if Rag hits face here, Grom trades to Rag, then you start just potentially losing this tank up ability.
Oh, we'll see where this one lands. I do agree the Grom is a better target, but Ragnaros disagrees. And you see Baylor.
Oh, here comes the armor.
Hand to the forehead. What happened? And this spot for Georgia, you don't like trading in your Grom in this spot, but honestly, what on earth are you going to do if you don't do that?
Yeah, I mean, actually, Georgia is actually, not that this is that relevant, but they're actually a little bit close to lethal with Gorehal and Grom. 17, there's 22.
It's important to count that.
I don't think that they're going to push some kind of damage play. I would strongly not recommend against that.
No, I think I agree with you, Strife. We're going push 10 to face with Grom, and then we go Ironforge Portal into Elise Starseeker. Go ahead.
And then just next turn set for the Gorehal.
Just get them. No. Honestly, that's not that bad of a play, to be perfectly honest with you.
I think it's not reasonable.
I think you Portal first.
Okay, I like Portal first. Yeah, Portal first is very reasonable.
What if you get a Korokron Elite?
Then you never know.
Portal first.
Georgia seems to be giving up a lot of tempo for these kind of armor ups.
I'm going to be honest. If I had gotten that particular minion, I actually love your line.
What if you just die
of pushing? What do you die to?
You're at 10 life. If Ragnaros hits you again, you're at 2.
So that's if it hits you again. You have 3 minions out for it to hit.
You can take like almost 100% win rate line here by tanking up from this position, I feel.
We'll see about that.
Okay.
We'll see about that.
Okay.
It is pretty high percentage. I'm not going to lie. Tank up is really strong.
It is really strong.
I just like killing them.
Yeah. Killing them's pretty good.
Yeah, the way you win the game, it's all right. I've done it a few times.
Yeah, card's actually worth a lot here. Baylor has some options. There's an option where you can play N'Zoth's First Mate and use it to knock off the Divine Shield and then just slam it. It's actually not bad because
what about running the Grom into it?
Oh, like N'Zoth and Grom, huh?
You set up 10 on board.
That's pretty interesting. Then you still get to keep the Slam to Cycle, and Cycle is actually worth a lot here. But you're playing your fast minion, not the double Fierce Monkeys. I wonder how vulnerable, let's see, a Grom that's...
Wow, what a pickup. Blood to Ichor. Now, they have lost the activator for Grom at this point, so it will need to find something else to work with.
Yeah.
But they do get some development on board here. But this is honestly fairly weak at this stage. Like, this is the kind of spot where Georgia can really start to recover the game. Gorehowl and Tank Up are going to buy a massive amount of value, and you add a shield block on top of that. Unless Baylor can kill them in the next couple of turns, I feel like Georgia's got this in the bag.
There's something I want to point out, that Gorehowl is actually extremely weak in this matchup, in that, from my experience, I would lean towards not playing Gorehowl, because usually what happens is you can kill like one minion with Gorehowl, and then the next swing usually kind of kills you itself, especially with all the big minions like Grom, not great Gorehowl targets. I prefer to see this turn that's like not a Gorehowl turn. Like, because there's like also Brawl, you can easily just kill stuff with Brawl instead of Gorehowl, not take the damage. You can also save more mana. You can turn that into armor with shield block and tank up as well. So I don't really see a Brawl this turn being that good, but I certainly think that because you have the Brawl, you kind of need the Gorehowl much less. I kind of like something like shield block armor, Elise even, or just not Gorehowl, I think.
We'll see where Georgia sits. Strife and I are very much in disagreement on this one. I like the Gorehowl. I think dropping to 19, facing 4 damage on board, Gorehal is mighty safe.
It is safe, but the other moves are safe as well.
It's just pretty hard. Kind of the point that we're getting at here is it's really tough for Georgia to lose.
Yeah. A lot of armor.
They've been set into a great spot given the openings. And Baylor, they've got, I think at this point it's throw caution to the wind and hope that Brawl isn't there. And when Georgia sees this kind of extension, are they foregoing the Fairy Dragon? If they play Fairy Dragon, it is Brawl 100%. If they don't play Fairy Dragon, you might see a hold.
Yeah, it's very hard to slow play against Tank Up though, because you're not really getting anywhere. Like how much damage is Baylor doing every turn? That turn they did 4 damage because the monkey didn't have charge, which is countered by the Tank Up.
Right, they effectively dealt 0 damage
that turn. And so you start slow playing. You're just giving Control Warrior more time to play his cards like Shield Block and Elise and just grind you out into the late game.
That's exactly where they're headed. Another Shield Slam gets picked up as well.
100% like saving this Shield Slam here. You have a lot of armor now with this Tank Up ability and the fact that you already have 10 armor. One way you can lose is to like a random Deathwing at the end. If you're actually in a commanding spot, I like actually saving a potential answer for Deathwing as well as maybe like something like Rom.
Yep. Looks like it's going to be Elise or Acolyte. Maybe a Bash here to just try to completely shut down the assault. But they have all the tools necessary to do this. Baylor's going to need some heat, and they're going to need to get a fortunate Brawl as well. And without both of those things happening, I don't see them winning this game. Yeah. Especially not when you start drawing Execute.
Yeah. Especially when the other player has a Shield Slam that they can just hold on to. So you're not going to win with just one big minion here. Yeah, not a great turn. Probably see a Grom getting just thrown down, maybe.
I don't know. I mean, this is the stage where they needed to draw Curator. They needed to have a really high threat potential of say, a Nixia or what's the other big dragon everyone plays?
Deathwing.
Is it Deathwing? I know Deathwing is in some of these builds. I feel like there's another dragon and I'm just forgetting it. What now? I'm not, though.
I mean, I very rarely see a card like Nefarian and Ysera in these decks.
Yeah, Nefarian and Ysera just don't quite pack the punch necessary.
Yeah.
Against Control Warrior, you're kind of hoping they just don't have one of those super strong openers. It's the Grom. And that is more than enough armor that Georgia can obtain to wipe this Grom out. Will require a Bash, and there you can see Execute. This is one of the classes that was actually...
Bash, though. You can just armor.
Yeah, this is one of the classes that was most affected by I'm sorry, but this is one of the archetypes that was most affected by the change to Execute, was Dragon Warrior, where a lot of times they had 1 extra mana floating, and having an Execute active was really easy. For Control Warrior, they're floating a lot of mana. They're oftentimes reacting to things, and that leaves them in positions where you don't see them quite doing as much. But for Dragon Warrior, it offsets a lot of turns.
That tempo means a lot more for Dragon Warrior than Control Warrior. I definitely like to see Acolyte and Slam here. Your Acolyte basically right now is only drawing 1 card. You're basically turning your Acolyte into 2 cards instead of 1, and the Slam it's cycling itself, so there's not really a downside in slamming this.
Yeah, gonna choose to just hold on to it. Again, I don't really think they need to do anything here, and they just have full control at this point. Twilight Guardian, it's nice, but this stage of the game is just it's over. Georgia has very effectively chased down the gazelle, and we are currently watching it being eaten.
Maybe that's one reason why I held Fairy Dragon, just to have a dragon for an activator going to these late games. But yeah, I think Baylor made some kind of like players throughout the game. I think they should have just gone all in at some point and just lost to Brawl. But when your opponent is already on the Tank Up and you have a hand like this, you can't really afford a player on cards like Brawl. You might as well just hope they don't have it and be in a better shape if they don't.
Yeah, that's a good point to make there too. You get a lot of times players, they play around stuff and they don't really effectively play around it. They do play around it.
But you're losing anyways.
Yes, yeah, it's not a winning strategy. And so being able to identify the difference of a hand that can play around those things and the difference of a hand that doesn't have time to wait, and you have to decide that if your opponent has a particular card, you will lose to it, is a very large part of Hearthstone.
Yeah. That's something that actually, if you have a lot of other card game experience, you can you can learn a lot from that going to Hearthstone, because this is a concept that's in very much like every card game.
You have to take risks at some point. Yeah. And Georgia with a fantastic Baron Geddon draw. Looks like Gorehowl into the Twilight Guardian, Baron Geddon tank up, and that'll sweep the board, draw a card, and have a 7/5.
That's pretty good. Yeah, you even get to tank up. You get 2 cards from Acolyte as well. Looks pretty good to me.
It's about as good as it gets from the old Baron Geddon.
Get to quickly kill your opponent too with it.
You remember that gazelle I was talking about? Well, they got to cook it first, so let's throw it on the grill. And no cards for Baylor. And, well.
Oh, that's
it's a little too late because your opponent has a 7/5, but it's a pretty good draw.
That's pretty good. You actually already drew both Fierce Monkeys, so there might not actually
be you're right. There won't be another beast. You know, I actually played against a Dragon Warrior that had Iron Beak out in the beast slot, and I very handedly lost the game because of that. And there we see smiles across the board, and how could you not be? That guy's got some notes already. He's like, yeah, it's not a big deal. We took the notes. We knew this was going to happen. We knew it was Dragon Warrior. I mean, it was easy from that point. But yeah, 1-0 lead now for Georgia. If you look at the game records for these guys, Baylor was 6-1 in games, have a 2-0 match record. Georgia was 6-3 in games with a 2-0 match record. But looking at that one, I feel like that might flip a little bit this week because Georgia was on point. They forewent the development of the Acolyte for a very long time, but that extra life kind of made a difference towards the end. We saw them with the extra armor available to be able to shield slam. We saw them being outside of range of pretty much any lethal that could have possibly come from Baylor at any point. Where the extra draw, they didn't really need it that game. They had all the tools that were necessary.
Yeah, props now, but I guess I can't really agree with that either way because I don't think they actually really ended up with more life. You know, minions also, take damage to kill. So by playing an Acolyte of Pain, it's not like you'd just be at less life than an armor up.
It's a very good point to make as well. Minions do take they do take damage to kill.
They do take damage as well.
I do that a lot too. Like a lot of times when I practice with people that I haven't practiced with before, I'm very much in the vein of the Firebat style of play, where you play your cards.
Oh yeah, that's a good strategy.
And Firebat and I were playing together, and there were so many times where I would be looking at a 2/5. He's like, I think you can just take the damage here. And I'm like, I think I bash slam this. It's like a Control Warrior mirror where you don't want to draw the extra cards for fatigue.
Oh, yeah.
And a lot of times I chose to bash slam, and at the end of the game, I look at it and go, that thing would have literally dealt me like 14 points of damage if I didn't kill it. And just tiny things like that. Playing your cards is a lot of value. And every minion's a threat at the end of the day.
Minions are repetitive damage. Minions are the basis of Hearthstone.
It is the core around which the game is driven. It's going to be Freeze Mage for Georgia, and normally
a Frost no keep. That
is really interesting, honestly. Now I'm not an expert with Freeze Mage. I tout myself as a fairly adept combo player. Frost Nova is not comboing with anything other than Doomsayer, and in this matchup, Doomsayer is important, but I feel like Frost Nova is not an important facet of that.
Another thing is Doomsayer is not likely to stick even with Frost Nova because of Execute. That combo is around turn 5, and by that time, since Execute is a 2 of, they should have over like 65-70% chance to have that Execute by turn 5 anyways.
So typically in this matchup, Warriors are very favored. Freeze Mage struggles with high life totals. But Baylor playing Dragon Warrior, what's the big difference in this matchup versus a traditional Warrior deck?
Well, the big difference is you cannot win as a Dragon Warrior by just armoring up. I feel like eventually Freeze Mage will kill you. Control Warrior can gain something like, well, we've all seen the screenshots with like 100 armor gains, so
is this image real or fake?
There's pretty much no limit. Dragon Warrior is just basically limited by just the little armor up ability every turn. It's actually pretty nice, but yeah, that's the main difference. I want to make a little bit different comment. This N'Zoth's first mate is actually insanely good against this against Freeze Mage because the early minions, Loot Hoarders and Novice Engineers, are usually kind of annoying. Again, we were talking a little bit about the minions earlier, where they're just annoying. They soak damage, and you might have to trade Axtra's Champion for these Loot Hoarders and Novice Engineers, whereas you can just kill them with this little 1-mana weapon here. So it's such an important card to have.
Yeah, we saw them swing on turn 1. Typically you're going to see 1 or 2 of them. It's pretty rare that anyone draws 3.
Yeah.
I'm curious if the swing is even necessary, though. In this spot, it just what you really do.
Yeah, you figure you have more time eventually to just make that decision to use all your charges. And
especially given their curve.
Yeah, and you're not really using your Fire War Axe anytime soon with the curve like this. So.
Yeah. So and not only that, but N'Zoth's first mate is also chipping away. Now it's actually attacked for 2 damage, and at some point it's got to be addressed. So far that card has been 3 damage, and it will occupy mana at some point, or it'll continue to deliver damage.
Yeah, I feel like at this point, though, you might as well just leave it up until you just finally AoE it down with something like a Blizzard. So
it's hard to justify investing into it, that's for sure.
It's really hard to justify pinging it for 2 mana.
Curve continues here for Baylor. Twilight Guardian to add alongside this. And the pressure is mounting. And I can see why Georgia kept the Frost Nova in this spot. If they draw Doomsayer, they do need a recovery option. We saw them Frostbolt the Alexstrasza's champion on turn 2. Kind of gives you a glimpse into what this deck is doing versus Dragon Warrior. Your burn spells can't just be saved for critical mass. You need to use them as removal in this matchup.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I like a double cycle here from Novice Engineer and Loot Hoarder. You just, like you said, draw that Doomsayer going to turn 5. You actually need, like, you can't just survive off of this 1 freeze, and at this point it's too late to single target down stuff with Fireball. You're not even fireballing a high attack minion, you're kind of fireballing a high health minion.
Right.
So, which doesn't do that much damage. Oh wow, this is way too early of a Frost Nova in my opinion.
Yeah, this is really interesting to me. So they want to avoid Draconid Crusher range in this spot, but how would they avoid it going into turn 6? They don't have another way to actually stop that in this spot. So I'm in agreement with you. I think the coin is very high value in this matchup, and they needed to find Doomsayer as quickly as possible, and to me that says dig for extra cards.
Yeah, it's not even just the coin is that valuable, but the fact that the Frost Nova is so valuable. And that's why I don't like Frost Nova keep in the opening hand, because Frost Nova freezes the entire board, right? So you want to think about when you can get the most value from Frost Nova. See, this Adrix coming down this turn, and now you could have just Frost Nova, instead of frosting 7 power, you Frost Nova 11 power, and this builds up more and more as the game progresses. So the later the Frost Novas go, the better. Unless you have, like, say, Frost Nova to follow up, like Frost Nova Doomsayer into Blizzard. Like, so Freeze Mage is very much about planning ahead, and since there is no ahead here in this hand, there's just, you know, nothing here to do next turn, and Frost Nova would just simply be better this turn instead of last turn.
Right, and because there's nothing to do, that spells dig for cards. And
yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly.
So I think everything here for Georgia worked against the long-term game plan. That's really the big trick of Freeze Mage is the long-term planning. Without a ton of experience, you can find some shortcomings with this one.
Mm-hmm. Not the easiest deck to play.
Not at all.
Hope that he gets another Frost Nova. No.
Well, it does pick up Blizzard, but this is a lot of damage on the horizon, and kind of the way they've played this game so far, it feels like they want to use Ice Block in another cycle in this spot.
Yeah.
But it's getting close to the damned if you do, damned if you don't territory.
Yeah. There's 12 damage from Baylor's side. So if you Ice Block, you go down to 7, but at least you have the mana developed. You know, if you had a higher life, maybe you can do something like an Acolyte of Pain and Loot Hoarder instead. But I feel like at this point, since you're not really going to be able to Acolyte and Ping on turn 7 if you don't play this Ice Block anyways, because you'll just be dead that turn.
Yep.
So might as well just develop the Ice Block.
Blackwing Corruptor, 3, 6, 7, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 damage available for Baylor this turn.
Not quite there.
But they can set up the pop on the block next turn.
Yeah,
Georgia's pretty much forced into Blizzard, and once again, there's no follow-up to it. So yeah. I just don't see them getting out of this without a tremendous series of draws.
I like to see a trade here with the 1/1 to the Loot Hoarder and then the weapon to the Novice Engineer, because Blizzard is very likely going to turn 6, and you know, this Loot Hoarder can threaten some minion kills on your guys. Same with Novice Engineer.
Yeah, I am in total agreement with you on this one. I don't think that extra point of damage is consequential at this point, and the damage on your life total isn't really important either. Most of the time, the first 15 damage you take is delivered from Alexstrasza, so being able to expend some of your life early on, it means almost 0 to this matchup.
Yeah. And some of it is about the breakpoints, right? With this kind of board, the moment that you...
Whoa. Now that is interesting. And they take Fire Blast over Shapeshift.
That's a huge misplay. because Shapeshift is just much better than Fire Blast. You get the armor, because most of the time this matchup, Fire Blast is better at killing minions because you don't take the minion damage, and that's oftentimes more than the armor. But in this matchup, you're hitting face a lot with these hero powers, and Shapeshift is twice as good as Fire Blast.
Hey, you just get an extra armor from it in this matchup. Blizzard is slated, but once again, no Frost Nova left, and even if Doomsayer was drawn at this point, there's not really anything to couple this. Georgia can extend the game for a few turns, but I feel the writing is on the wall.
Yeah. The reason why I like to see the weapon just swing in here is because at this point, with the mage already at 6, you have to think that any time your board gets unfrozen, you're going to pop the block anyways. I don't think it's too much about this one chip damage with the that weapon that saved. So, yeah.
I'd like to see them just go ahead and swing with the Fiery Orax here, too. I mean, one of the ways that Georgia gets out of this at this point is another Blizzard or a Flame Strike. And so Baylor needs to threaten a way to pop the Ice Block and then follow up with it. So I think here, not using the Fiery Orax could potentially be a misplay. I do like swinging with the Rusty Hook and then go ahead and hero powering. That means when they set Fiery Orax, they'll be able to take Georgia down to 1 and then pop the block.
Okay, as long as you're popping the block in the same turn.
Right. As long as you're just popping the block at the lowest life total possible as soon as possible, that's the only concern.
Yeah.
Boy, isn't that guy a timely draw?
A little bit too late.
The end is coming, Doomsayer. Just not on the right side.
It's actually, impossible for Georgia to get a Frostova and play Frostova Doomsayer. These cycle cards cost too much mana, so.
Curious if there's any options for like Ice Lance Frostbolt. No, they're at 4.
I actually like Emperor this turn. You're going to lose your block anyways.
Oh, I do like Emperor a lot, actually.
Like, there's no way you're not going to lose your block at this point with this hand. So you might as well just play him and so you have more options going to the later turns. You know, Georgia's goal has to be to cycle as much as possible with these cards, and by reducing everything, by 1, you can do more.
We'll see where this goes.
There is.
Boys, it's almost like we were talking about this a few turns ago.
Yeah, a little bit too.
It's unfortunate,
late.
really. Now, if they draw Ice Block, actually, that could potentially make things interesting.
Yeah, there's no.
I'd like to see them play the Blood
execute
Mage.
right now.
They need to play the Blood Mage here. This is another misstep by Georgia. The way that they're going to get back in this game is Frost Nova Doomsayer into Alexstrasza themselves defensively with another Ice Block up that Baylor will pop.
Yeah.
So once they're at 15, then they hope to find a way to recover. If Baylor's hand is something exactly like it is, a bunch of utility.
And cycle cards. You need your actual meat of your deck. You can't just keep all these cycle cards in your hand. Especially if you're passing 2 mana, that's way too greedy to keep Blood Mage. You're not trying to.
Yeah, the reason
Blast
Blood
them for
Mage
30
the reason
right
Blood
now.
Mage is such a good card is because when you need it to be spell power, it's spell power and for cheap. And when you need it to be another card, it turns into another card for pretty cheap.
Yeah, that's interesting to double draw the Aqua here. Is there a mill here? Oh, if there is, that's fine.
There is a mill here. No Ice Block, and that'll wrap things up. Georgia cannot stay alive through this turn. Well, now
Not
they
through the
can't.
Fire Blast.
Yeah, not through the Fire Blast. The
Not
Fire
free
Blast
space.
actually being a lot better than the Shapeshift in this
That
spot.
is true. That's true. That's actually something we didn't talk about.
It's
But
the 4-pronged attack. The board, the board, the hero,
The weapon.
hero power, and the face. Or I'm sorry, and the
that's
hand.
three. Oh yeah, the hand.
So they had an attack from every angle, and you can see why Warrior can sometimes put Mage in a very difficult spot. It's just a constant assault, but the navigation here from Georgia, that needed to be stepped up a little bit. I think that they were too liberal with their resources at some spots, then too conservative with resources at some spots.
Yeah, exactly. It's very much about ordering with Freeze Mage. And we didn't talk about this too much before the game, but I like to say that Dragon Warrior is still massively, I think, favored against Freeze Mage. Even though it's not quite on the Control Warrior level, I don't think anyone would say that Freeze Mage actually favored in this matchup to begin with. So
Yeah, I wouldn't say so either. It's certainly a very difficult one. But Georgia, but Baylor, the attack on every single angle, that's exactly what they needed to do to put themselves in that spot. And honestly, the Fire Blast, kind of a brilliant move in some situations where maybe they get out of that one by freezing the board, freezing the face, and then having another setup and going from there. But it wasn't available because of that. So 1-1 series now. Mage and Shaman, it is Freeze Mage versus Shaman and Warlock. At this point, the Freeze Mage is looking brilliant because mid-range Shaman and Zoo are two of its best matchups.
Those are basically the reason why you're bringing Freeze Mage to these tournaments. This might be pretty much the only deck that Freeze Mage is good against, but these decks are so popular that that's one of the reasons why.
Styles on Rogue a bit too.
Okay, you're right, but some of the only decks.
Rogue is a pretty rare one.
Yeah.
Rogue is such an interesting class to me because the people who play Rogue are such loyalists, but if you're not a Rogue player, you just go, that deck sucks.
Yeah, it's very Rogue is very mulligan based too in some of these early things, because if you fall behind as Rogue, you just die. And it's actually pretty easy to fall behind as Rogue. So
I like Rogue is in such a weird spot right now too because it just all ends every time.
There's no recovery options.
You just
no
go
AoE.
for it.
You pretty much have to get this crazy Rogue opener, but the best Rogue players are very good at getting these crazy Rogue openers frequently.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. So Baylor, Spirit Claws, Blood Mage, Feral Spirit, Azure Drake in the opening hand. This is a matchup where I don't feel like they could afford to wait for anything. I like this Spirit Claws keep for the same reason that you mentioned with Nizos first mate. It's able to take care of Loot Hoarder, Novice Engineer, and the like. But for the rest of the game, they need to apply pressure basically as quickly as they can.
Yeah, interesting to drop the Blood Mage with Spirit Claws. I think this is due to the fact that Baylor knows Georgia's playing Freeze Mage, and there's not very many 3 attack minions early, 3 health minions, mostly 1 health minions. So yeah, I do like that. A lot of the times with Shaman here, you want to find a way to navigate around Doomsayer. So sometimes, if you have the right hand, you can play in a way where they either have to Doomsayer like something very weak, like a Totem or like a 1-drop, and then you flood the board in a certain way where if they drop Doomsayer that turn, you can Flame Tongue through. There's no way to do it with this hand, but it's something that you always want to think about. So yeah, Doomsayer does get its way here.
Yeah, Doomsayer this is about the premier draw you can have versus a Shaman right now, is being able to turn to Doomsayer a Totem Golem. It buys you a massive amount of tempo, and it's pretty good value as well.
Yeah, I wonder if Baylor would have played a little bit differently if they had this Flame Tongue Totem in their opening hand, because it's very much easier to play around a Doomsayer with a Flame Tongue Totem.
Yeah, you just make a lot of totems, and once you get a lot of those on board, you get to unlock 4 damage with Flame Tongue Totem, and it launches an assault in a different way, but the damage is comparable. The amount of damage you make up in one turn by playing Flame Tongue Totem is pretty enormous.
Flame Tongue Totem is actually insanely good in this matchup. It's like a 2-mana 4/2 charger, 4/3 charger.
Yeah. This will be Feral Spirit indeed for Baylor, who is looking to follow that up with Flame Tongue Totem. But Georgia, Forgotten Torch, and many draw options in hand. They are looking poised to keep control for a bit.
What do you think about something just like Double Cycle here? Because you're not really going 2 mana efficient by torching and passing your 1 mana. I'm assuming you're not going to Ice Lance anything after the torch. I know that there's a weapon to kill some of these minions, but I feel like you might as well even save Torch for like a Flame Tongue Totem and just being able to cycle through your deck a little bit better, mana efficient.
Yeah, I think digging here is very important. They need to find a few more tools to make sure they can keep the board under control, and it's a very efficient way to dig. Now, with Frostbolt drawn, they could deviate from the Loot Hoarder, but I think that the Frostbolt can really be saved here. Their hand is already piling up a significant amount of damage, and the Forgotten Torch is going to amplify that in terms of draw density. So Frostbolting here cuts into the damage, but the Loot Hoarder kind of builds to your overall game plan, where Baylor, they're stuck on 2 mana this turn, so you know you're not going to get overwhelmed. So I think I like the Loot Hoarder because of that.
Yeah, Flame Tongue Totem does get to buff 2 minions if you leave 1 up. And you can still have this torch for the Flame Tongue Totem, and you can actually still play the Loot Hoarder next turn with the torch. So actually there's still, the Frostbolt here is still very good. I feel like you still get the cycle as Loot Hoarder going to your next turn. Your mana curve is actually, you just leave yourself with so many options here.
Yep. Acolyte and Loot Hoarder.
Yeah, not too much, nothing really important this turn to kill, right? So
yeah. Now the way that they've played Acolyte so far, I'm not sure this is ever hitting the board, but I can't blame them for Forgotten Torch. It's right in line with what they did last turn, which was just handle the threats as they come by. But now suddenly the hand is a bit slim pickings. I would have liked to see Acolyte and then follow up. What's that 2 damage really worth right now?
Yeah, me too. There's a very big difference this turn because this turn there's no more removal. So last turn you can use your Frostbolt and still have the torch for the Flame Tongue Totem. But now there's no torch for Flame Tongue Totem with this play, which is significantly different now.
Yeah, it's a much shakier position, I think. And that's, once again, the importance of the long-term game plan. You know, Freeze Mage isn't a deck that is about turn-by-turn play. It's a very macro-oriented thing where you need to have a big overall picture of what's happening, and with the variables you're given, find the way to navigate the situation. That's why very talented players love this deck, is because it gives you so many unique spots where your experience guides you through that. But here for Georgia, it seems like they're taking the strongest turn they can rather than taking the overall big picture, and I feel like that's costing them later down the line.
Yeah, this is a big thing about Freeze Mage, definitely. I agree with that. There's 2 options with Baylor this turn. I feel like they cannot play Feral Spirits here because the Overload is too important. So I think it's either between Flame Tongue and a Hero Power or the Thunder Bluff. I actually do like Flame Tongue Hero Power a little bit more. I feel like it's more damage in the long run, and damage is what you want against Freeze Mage because you're doing 2 damage here, and then starting from next turn, whereas Thunder Bluff's doing 0 damage this turn. And the next turn, you're getting 4 damage, assuming the Flame Tongue hits 2 totems. And then you have Fire Elemental turn 6, and then you have this turn 7 Thunder Bluff Hero Power play. And at that point, you would actually squeeze in so many totems because you're playing Flame Tongue and the totem there. So that turn 7 is going to be a big buff from Thunder Bluff. So this is more mana efficient, and I guess it's 3/6 stickier in a way because it's
requires Fireball.
Yeah, it's like bigger as far as like Blizzard goes, but. Yeah, I mean, you can just counter this with Fireball as well, like you said. So
it's kind of a double entendre there.
Yeah, you're right. I guess not that sticky if you just think about the Fireball part.
I was thinking about the bigger as far as Blizzard is concerned.
Yeah.
Thunderbluff Valiant is such a good card.
Yeah.
Blizzard made it.
Yeah.
It's bigger as far as Blizzard's concerned.
I see.
I think I like the Ice Block here. And one of the reasons I like the Ice Block is because this will allow Georgia to play a little bit more risky with their cards.
Okay.
And if they pick up an Alexstrasza, they're going to be primed to win this game. With being able to play Emperor Thorson discount and then have the Evolved Kobold plus the damage they have, that single card will basically win them the game. So developing the Ice Block now means you're free to take more risks. But this kind of turn may cut into that a little bit. That was the Flame Tongue Totem in addition is a pretty significant swing.
Yeah, that Flame Tongue Totem itself is now a 2/3 permanently, starting to be able to threaten a lot of damage. This is really cool at Baylor. They took an alternate line here. It worked out pretty well as well. I think it was maybe weak to the Fireball at turn.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah,
now,
that's exactly kind of what they needed. But a lot of damage after Alexstrasza.
The Flame Tongue is the big kicker here, though.
Yeah.
If they played the Emperor Thorus on this turn, Baylor would not have necessarily been threatening lethal. They would have had pushed 5 damage this turn instead of pushing 9 damage this turn.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't be threatening the block pop here. But now they're threatening to pop the block. The Emperor Thorson doesn't work quite as well. So investing into the Thunderbluff Valiant here and then having the surprise factor is kind of paying off in spades for Baylor right now.
Yeah, exactly. Georgia actually has enough damage kind of with Emperor into Alex 15, then this Snowbolt plus all these spells. That's more than 15 damage, but they just don't have the time to actually get there.
Yeah, I mean, if they played the Emperor, the block would have been popped. Honestly, I'm curious if there's any way they actually get out of it from this spot without drawing multiple big draws, because that Flame Tongue Totem pushed a ton.
It feels like Georgia needs to find a... They need to find a turn to actually clear this board so that they can play Alexstrasza into the burn. Without clearing this board, anytime you play Alexstrasza, I feel like you're going to lose the block.
They need a Frost Nova or a Blizzard right here. Frost Nova or Blizzard would allow them to stall this board. Ooh, does that work? Yeah, this works as well. So in this position, they can use Kona Cold, and then they can use Fireball onto the Fire Elemental. That will allow them to get to turn 9 safely with an Ice Block, where they Alexstrasza onto Baylor. And then they follow that with Evolved Kobold, Frostbolt, Ice Lance, and that's enough to finish.
Okay, that makes sense, yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with your play, I guess. I guess what I want to say is, unless you lose the block this turn, there's actually kind of no point in playing the Fireball in the 6/5 either. right? Because you're going to lose the block anyways.
So fireballing the 6-5 is to make sure that
you
Baylor,
don't lose your block.
Right.
Yeah.
So if Baylor had something like Spell Power Double Lightning Bolt, it may be enough to get it done. This way actually works more efficiently as well, because this cuts out 2 extra damage from the Thunder Bluff Valiant being able to be activated with hero power. So I think it's actually impossible for Baylor to pop the block from this position, and this opens up the window for Georgia to play Alex Straza and then follow up with the burst damage. So I'm pretty sure they just won this game.
Yeah, as long as Georgia doesn't lose their block this turn, right? Like Alex 15, then they lose their block, but then it's lethal. Let's see. Let's count the damage. So Frostwise Ice Lance is
12
11?
plus 5, 7. It's with the
Evolved
evolved
the
Kobold.
and
Yeah,
then
so
plus
with the
6.
Kobold, it's 17.
Okay, so yeah, 11 plus 6, 17.
And then they also have the hero power at that point, so they have 18 damage coming in. So unless Baylor has some way to heal, which that is not found in mid-range Shamans, they got this one wrapped up. Very, very timely pickup for Alex Straza there.
Yeah, so there's no point holding Fireball if you can just guarantee that you have the lethal anyways. So I like the Fireball play.
Alex Straza all day, every day. And that's bad news for Baylor. That's about the worst news they could have gotten. And there's the well played. They know it. And you can kind of see it in their body language here. And Georgia, like, yeah, right down. That's the win. Count it.
Is there any Maelstrom Pearl that could heal them somehow for one?
No, unfortunately there's not.
Yeah.
There's no way to blow up secrets with it. There's just one of those things. There's no
nothing that heals you for,
There's no minion in the catalog that actually heals you that turn. Voodoo Doctor's there, but
Battle Cry.
Yeah.
If only the healing tome still healed your face like before.
Then they could die at 16 instead of 15.
That's true.
Hey, why not? Let's tack an extra 3 on there with Blood Mage.
I don't think they have the mana, do they?
Oh yeah, 20 total damage available for Georgia this turn. And they're going to count it, and count it. But they know it. He's like, don't play the Blood Mage. Who knows, man? If you accidentally click that hero power, we're done for 2-1 lead for Georgia now. This is one of those matchups, like you said, it's one of the matchups that's the reason you play Freeze Mage. Capitalize.
To pick up wins against Shaman sometimes with Freeze Mage. I believe it's the highest, it's the matchup that mid-range Shaman is the weakest against right now.
I believe so, and the reason that's the case is because it's very board-centric. Prior to this, when it was aggro Shaman builds, you had Doom Hammers, you had Lava Bursts, you had an early push on the board which was stronger than what you have now, and you had the burst from hand, which didn't require you to have a board position.
Yeah, so by the turns that they're playing Blizzard and Flame Strike, then you're already using your Doom Hammers and Rockbiter, so you don't care about the board anymore. And turns 1 to 5, Freeze Mage doesn't interact very well with the board anyways.
Exactly. So the fact that it's had this overhaul, which is largely on the back of the Rockbiter change, is a big impact. Rockbiter being changed from 1 mana to 2 mana meant that turn 6 Doomhammer Rockbiter for 10 damage was no longer available. Yeah. It meant that you could almost never get a Doomhammer double Rockbiter turn, which was available on turn 7. Yeah. Now your big burst point is on turn 7, and then your biggest burn point is on turn 9. And aggro Shamans they don't have that much time. They will die before that.
Yeah, it's not all just about the Doomhammer synergy with the Rockbiter either, because like we were talking about the Control Warrior against Dragon Warrior, with how, if you're just trading turns 1 and 2 against like a slower deck, you're going to just lose once you get in the late game. But with Rockbiter being 1, oftentimes you can take a tempo lead on board as an aggro Shaman, because you don't have time to trade your 1-drop for their 1-drop, 2-drop for their 2-drop. You have to just use these very cheap removal, 1 mana Rockbiters to push in damage as well with your Teletrogs. So,
Shaman mirror match, Baylor with Harrison Jones in the hand. This is an interesting card in this deck because obviously it's slated to kill Spirit Claws and pick up some pretty enormous value, but is this ever a card you feel like you could keep in your opening hand?
I've had some experience both ways. I think it's not a keep, unless your hand's very, very good, and this is nowhere near good to keep. I'm also more tempted to keep it with a coin, because you have more options. You have 3 other cards instead of 2 other cards after you keep Harrison. With here, it'd pretty much be a ridiculous keep.
Yeah, I'm in total agreement with that. Totem Golem, on the other hand, never a ridiculous keep. The strongest minion available in the game, if you're asking me.
Do you always keep Tunnel Trog?
I pretty much always keep Tunnel Trog and Totem Golem.
Yeah. Oh, no, I think it's not even pretty much. This is always. Okay. I definitely like Coin Totem Golem here.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's a great... If they had Blood Mage, I could see the Spirit Claws, but contesting the Tunnel Trog with 3-4 is going to leave them in fantastic shape. And normally, prior to Spirit Claws existing, you were kind of praying your opponent didn't have their own Totem Golem, because at the end of this board state, your opponent would have a 3-1. But with Spirit Claws, now you take a little bit more damage, but everything gets cleaned up.
And you still have the 2 charge of the Claw left over, importantly.
Such an important card to the matchup. Now, that being said, that's if Baylor doesn't roll a Healing Totem. A Healing Totem will change that.
Yeah, what do you think of like pre-attacking this guy to play around Healing Totem or something like that?
You know, I actually kind of like that. It does open the opportunity to take more damage. Oh, that prevents it too. There's actually a 50% chance.
Yeah, Taunt Totem and Healing Totem.
And if Stoneclaw Totem is in the factor, then it's definitely a pre-attack, and now they're going to get punished.
Yeah, this is a very huge punish, because they could have had a Mana Tide here just popping away every turn, and now Mana Tide just going to get killed for free by the 3-1 here. One thing I like to note is like these like board-centric like mirrors for Shaman. The most important turns is like turns 1 and 3. These turns are incredibly deep and complex, even though they seem simple. And any like small optimizations, turns 1 to 3, can actually lead to like a snowball. So like even if they can just see like play a little better and just see a move like pre-attacking this. Also, if they pre-attack it, if they roll like a hero power that's say a spell power, you can also even kill another totem or kill like a Feral Spirits, things like that. Yeah, it's also Feral Spirits that punishes them by not pre-attacking.
It was Overload.
Because okay, you're right. Never mind then.
But yeah, I'm in total agreement with you here. You know, a lot of times that's what this Shaman matchup comes down to, and to draw another comparison to it, where I said that the Freeze Mage game was very much macro-oriented, where it's overall big picture.
Yeah.
The opening turns for Shaman are very much that way, where when you get to the mid and late stages, it's about being able to time your AoE spells right. But that's a turn-to-turn thing where you can look at the board and know, I need to AoE right now. But turns 1 through 3 here, a simple attack with that Spirit Claws would have changed this game, and instead, Georgia is put into an incredibly difficult spot.
Yeah, I think it's really like technical oriented, like very micro oriented turns 1 to 3. I feel for the creature combat and things like setting everything up correctly. This turn, Georgia wants to. And they need to find a good move here, right? And oftentimes you want to play your things from below as late as possible, as getting them closer to 0 mana. But I don't know if there's a great other move here. So
yeah, I don't think they have the liberty of foregoing some development this turn. I think it's either got to be Feral Spirit or Thing from Below, and choosing to totem up again. This is borderline suicide for this spot.
Yeah, this is just setting for like it's very heads up that you have Lightning Storm, and what your opponent can do is just they can just not overcommit, and you're slowly going to fall behind. I mean, I think dropping Azure Drake is fine, but definitely don't drop minions that would easily get killed by Lightning Storm. This totem roll is pretty good, the 1-1 here.
Yeah, the 1-1 is actually pretty important in this spot. It does open up some possibilities where if they get past the Stoneclaw totem, they now have trade options. And so I believe they're looking to Lightning Storm sometimes here. But this is not a very strong Lightning Storm.
Yeah.
It's about as mandatory as it gets, I'd say. It will force 4 extra damage as well due to the 2 damage roll onto the Azure Drake. So all that damage they could have expended in the Totem Golem was spent and then some.
The more important thing than the 4 damage is the fact you actually lose your totem. Having that extra 1 totem is incredibly important, especially when your hand is something like a Flame Tongue totem. You can just start, that's how you start getting ahead. One of the ways you start getting ahead in this matchup.
Yeah, Shaman does a surprisingly good job of staying alive in the 10 to 14 range.
Yeah, they have a lot of taunts, that's what it is.
Yeah. Speaking of taunts, Mana Tide's sitting behind a couple, and Georgia once again put in the hot seat. And this is part of the punishment that comes with having the Lightning Storm too early, is if your opponent has a follow-up like this, the Mana Tide totem can almost single-handedly win the game.
Yeah, there's some other moves. They're playing pretty fast. I was looking at something potentially like Hero Power plus Flame Tongue and play a thing from below for 0. That actually sets the Flame Tongue totem up as well. You don't really have a great trade with Flame Tongue. You can actually, I mean, you have a chance, right? See, there's lots of ways that can go well with that play, because even if you roll like a blank totem, like a 1/1, you can still Flame Tongue the 0/2 in the weapon into one of the 2/3s. If you roll Spell Power Totem, because you get to roll an extra totem, you can just attack, with your Spirit Claws. You still have, technically, your Flame Tongue is kind of protected by the 5/5 as well. Even if it dies, it's, it's whatever.
I feel like a lot of this was Georgia feels like they need to dig for AoE, and so they were trying to build the tension in a very similar state to Baylor's, where they had a protected Mana Tide totem, and that's giving Baylor the attack initiative. And when one player has the attack initiative in the Shaman Mirror match, that player is usually winning.
Yeah, attack initiative is incredibly important in this matchup. Georgia also has pretty much all minion interaction here, right? There's not any AoE like you're saying. And that means that Flame Tongue is incredibly scary. Maybe even more so than the Mana Tide, because when you're just dropping minions into their minions and they have a Flame Tongue, they're just going to propagate through and kill all your stuff for free almost. At least they kill a Mana Tide on the left, so there's nothing on the left of the Flame Tongue.
Yeah, I think that's a big deal, is to some of the damage is cut out from that side. And if they don't stop the draws now, they're not stopping. Yeah. But this is, once again, the attacker's initiative kind of showing its teeth here. Azure Drake Lightning Storm sweeps up the board, and Baylor is in a commanding position.
Ragnaros is actually a pretty poor card in this matchup as well.
Yeah, it's also poor when you only have 5 mana because you're overloaded for so much.
Yeah. Okay.
Honestly, kind of looking back, I think hexing that Totem Golem might have been okay.
The hexing the 3/1 turn 3.
Like the mistake has already been punished, but that hex has been in hand the entire time, and they've taken a ton of damage because of it. Battle Frog.
Well, I mean, I guess looking back at it, I'd actually just prefer something like a Feral Spirits on turn 3 instead of Hex, right? They had other moves, I feel, and they took a line where they just hero powered and stuff for Lightning Storm, but there are other moves where they can continue fight from board control without using Hex. But yeah, okay. I think not much left this game. I don't see Georgia's making come back here too often.
It's nigh impossible. The card advantage is so much for Baylor.
There's so much damage too from Baylor. They have Spirit Claws, Lightning Bolt, and Fire Elemental. That's 9 damage. Well, Spirit Claw's not activated yet, but there's at some point. Oh, two Fire Elementals.
Yeah, I'm digging the Fire Elementals here. It's good to see that card make a comeback.
Yeah,
that was like one of the most powerful cards in the initial stage of Hearthstone.
Yeah, most of those cards are not as strong. It feels like there's kind of been a power creep, but you're right. It was definitely one of the strongest cards back in the initial Hearthstone. It just doesn't feel like it has the same impact as before, though. But it's still good. It's just not...
Well, before, Harvest Golem was about as strong as minions got. Now we got 2 mana 3/4s.
Things from belows. people used to play Yetis, and now people don't even play Master Revolutions. People don't play the 4 mana 7/7.
I know, it's crazy.
Not good enough, apparently.
It's not good enough. Neither is Thunderbluff Valiant in this spot. Georgia going to drop this game, and Baylor going to sail through this one very decisively, and we have game number 5 coming up in our first set of the day.
I like these close matches.
Oh, I love them. There's not much more I could possibly want from the 2 0 teams right now. I mean, these are the teams that have set themselves aside from the rest of the pack so far.
Yeah. It is cool that you can definitely kind of see it's like a kind of a Tespa like college kind of event. You can definitely see some improvements areas where the players can make better, but these are full-time students, and if everyone here was playing at the professional level, you wouldn't really see these students being able to compete for these scholarship minis, So,
right. I mean, they would just be full-time players at that point.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's a difficult task. It's not easy. And, perhaps I am being a bit harsh on some of the criticism. Ragnaros just loves space. Perhaps a bit much criticism, but the idea isn't to criticize, it's to illustrate the differences of one line to another. And in this spot, they're just showing off now.
I can play all my stuff.
Still had all these.
Yeah. And Bloodlust is in this deck.
Oh, you definitely tanked the Ragnaros here. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. He's just getting up. He's dropping the mic. New pilot coming in.
Okay.
Yeah, they do have a democratic vote where their decision-making process is, but from class to class, different players will pilot different strategies. And now I think that's the guy who was there last week, the fourth guy in the back.
Maybe he's this, like the secret genius. You know, they had the wrong person in the back, and now they have their secret mastermind coming to carry them.
That's their manager. It's going, great job, guys. Great job. Well, you know, you go out there, you give 110%, and you play your best, and hope the outcome comes your way. Hashtag typical sports PR response. But yeah, game number 5, and it's Shaman versus Warlock at this point. Now, a lot of times in the past, Zoo has been favored versus Shaman, and especially the mid-range ones. But we've seen it change so much.
Not anymore.
Discard Zoolocks now are much more of a high roll feeling deck where you want to power spike really early with a Silverware Golem discard. And Shaman is now typically running Maelstrom Portals and Lightning Storms, so it's very difficult for Zoo to stay on the board.
And also, it's not just the fact that Shaman's running 4 AoEs now instead of 2. It's the fact that Maelstrom Pearl is a better card than Lightning Storm ever was. You know, because the problem with Lightning Storm is you Lightning Storm against Zoo, you're spending 5 mana for the 2 to 3 damage. You know, ultimately, all that it's not just the 3 mana. You know, you're still overloaded next turn, and Zoo always has more minions to drop. You know, Zoo doesn't run out of cards, not at least in the first, say, 10 turns because of the life tap. So yeah, it's just a much better card. You can Maelstrom Pearl, you can deal with their board, and you can not overload, and you can have the 1 drop left over. It's just so much different.
It's a lot of stuff. There we see the Silverware Golem early, and that's an important card to this matchup.
Alchemist is an incredibly good tech card in this matchup. It kills totems. I mean, it kills totems for free.
And honestly, being teched against those 2 matchups, I think, is really important right now. You know, Crazed Alchemist's main priority is to make sure Doomsayer doesn't hit. But it has a lot of splash potential where there's unique interactions with Direwolf Alpha. It's great at taking care of Flame Tongue totems or just totems in general. It's honestly one of the better tech choices that's in Zoo right now.
Yeah, Crazed Alchemist is like a tech card that's borderline like main deck because just so many minion trading options with Crazed Alchemist that it's almost not even a tech card at some point.
Choose to mulligan away the Silverware Golem. I'm a little bit surprised by that because I feel like in this matchup, they pick up Soulfire, they pick up Darkshire Librarian. Having that card in hand to magnify the discard potential, I think, is really important. And there's a Darkshire Librarian right off the bat. Now suddenly they're going to have no chance to get a free 3/3.
But would Darkshire count? Would that card be the card that was played next turn instead of, say, something like Peddler? Now, this is a deck that I personally don't have a lot of experience playing the discard Zoolock. So I guess I don't really know. I probably wouldn't have personally kept the Silver Golem, but I'd like to say I've never even played this deck once.
My experience playing with it is that your power spike potential is incredibly high. And Zoo has really changed a lot of its facets. Again, in this matchup, it's hard to get something on the board to stick unless you have pretty much an overwhelming presence. And so the way that Zoo wins this matchup is by throwing caution to the wind and just going all in versus your opponent. You force them to have either Spell Power Maelstrom Portal or you force them to have a Lightning Storm. And if they don't have one of those two, it's an enormous threat potential. And so while I don't think they're playing Darkshire Librarian right now, the point is the Silverware Golem enables a lot of their draws, where it enables Soulfire and Darkshire Librarian, and I think those are 2 key cards to the matchup.
Yeah, and there's just enough discard cards in their deck where they're bound to pick up something.
Right. Like if you're playing the mechanic, you probably don't get rid of the cards that are the reason the mechanic exists, which are Malchezaar's Imp and Silverware Golem.
Okay, sounds fair.
Really, the only exceptions to that are things like N'Zoth Warrior.
Yeah, because
it's named after N'Zoth, but N'Zoth is very much not a card you're activating for at least 10 turns. But here, I'm in total agreement with the Knife Juggler. I think that Baylor just needs to push as much as they can as quickly as possible, and it's really important to keep your hand size low in this one so that you're always maximizing the potential of your draws. So I'd even like to see them coin the Malchezaar's in here.
Okay, that makes sense. I don't think you ever play Darkshire Librarian here because you want to discard something where your hand's smaller, you know. So here you're discarding all the good cards.
It's ideally a Silverware Golem or 0, or you combine it with Malchezaar's Imp. So that would be the reason to hold the Malchezaar's Imp, is so they can ensure the refund with that combination. But In this spot, if your opponent Lightning Storms that board, I think you're pretty comfortable with that. Like you mentioned, they're still overloaded in that spot.
Yeah, I'd be pretty comfortable if they Lightning Storm that board. I think it's just important to have these, at least some kind of board to set up for Defender of Argus. That's the important part of this.
Yep.
Defender of Argus on those two, that's,
wow. I like this a lot because this helps cut into Maelstrom Portal potential, where the Voidwalker is going to have 2 health, and so the Knife Juggler would be the lone threat that's vulnerable to Maelstrom Portal in this spot.
This makes sense. And you have one more ping here with the coin, so any ping on any minion makes this fine. So yeah, I actually like this, and they even have another ping here. Probably like to see, I guess, Flame Imp here over Malkazar's Imp, because you want to guarantee that effect activating, and this is a very likely Lightning Storm turn after, where your Imp might die. So.
Yep. I like this a lot. It is a little bit technically weaker to Lightning Storm, but again, I think you're okay with Lightning Storm hitting the spot. They're actually going to trade in the Dark Peddler to even further play around Maelstrom Portal even. So in the event of Spell Power, Maelstrom Portal here, which is actually unavailable right now, but they're again looking at the next couple of turns here. And this is where you're going to see Baylor have to make a decision, where are they willing to move all in, or are they going to try to play a conservative, slower game? Because the race is against whether or not Georgia has big AoE. If they don't have big AoE, Baylor has won the game.
Exactly. That's why they can afford to make that kind of like bad trade, because from Baylor's perspective, if there's no AoE from Georgia's side, they will win anyways. And it's not just the spell power Maelstrom Portal that they're weak against. It's just even one simple Lightning Storm would make that trade much better. So
this is a very interesting spot where if Baylor's feeling a little bit lucky, they could go with the Soulfire Librarian. Instead, they pick up Power Overwhelming alongside of it. 3, 6, 10. That is 18 damage available this turn alone.
Okay, that's a lot of damage.
I think here they're free to turn the corner and just push, because they can set up a 2-turn lethal here onto Georgia, lest there be some board sweeps. And if they trade with the Flame Imp, that's opening up Maelstrom Portal a little bit more. So I would like to see some development alongside this.
It's kind of weird to do the development here right before a potential AoE turn. There might be a way where you can do this a little bit conservative. What do you think about something like Crazy Alchemist, your, say, Knife Juggler to like a 1-3, maybe protect it from some AoE?
I like that a lot, and honestly, I personally am throwing down the Malkazar's Imp with it, because when you don't see AoE from your opponent, the game's over. When you do see AoE from your opponent, you're going to be in a tough spot anyway. But maybe the Malkazar's Imp in hand hedges into that a little bit. But no development means that there's no threat of lethal, and so Georgia using Maelstrom Portal here means that they're going to be in a much better recovery position. Mana Worm's a pretty good one to get, too.
Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
Yeah, now the turns are looking tough. That Crazed Alchemist on the Knife Juggler would have been a brilliant play. It would have protected from the Maelstrom Portal. It would have gotten an extra juggle. They would have had an extra 2-power minion out right now. Instead, it's not quite getting the job done. I think they're tunnel visioning a little bit too much on wiping out an opposing totem.
Yeah, I actually kind of like a Hero Power Flame Tongue over Thing from Below. That makes your future Thing from Below 2 mana instead of 4. From this position, I can see Flame Tongue Tome oftentimes being a dead card, where you're, instead of trying to, say, hold on to this Flame Tongue turn where we finally get good trades against Zoo, you have to realize that you're probably not going to get the initiative against Zoo with this kind of board state and this kind of hand. And just use it kind of as to absorb some damage. You know that no Soulfires or POs have come out so far this game, so like a 5/5 here is not really that powerful anyways. And you want some kind of like swing turn, so having a very like close to 0 mana Thing from Below going in the future seems maybe better than say overvaluing this Flame Tongue, I feel.
Life Tap is going to be slated here for Baylor, who is taking a much slower approach than I had envisioned. I guess they're killing the... Ah, that's smart. There we go.
Yeah, this turn actually kind of ended up slow from Baylor. They actually squeezed in a Life Tap somewhere in there, whereas they could just play Darkshire Librarian, had an extra 3/2 on board, and got to cycle that card because of the Imp, right?
Yeah, I feel like they're playing this matchup a little too slow.
Yeah.
And at this, I mean, they could have had Georgia down to 10 with a Power Overwhelming in hand. And instead, they chose to have this board state where they're trying to maximize the value from card draws but that's giving Georgia time. And if Georgia starts to unlock the power potential of this late game, that's how they win.
Yeah, and your imp might not stick around any longer, so it's actually a hard decision which one to kill.
I think I'd probably tend to kill the Voidwalker here. Like, if you just cut power off the board, you open up the attack for Fire Elemental.
Go ahead, Doomguard, though. With that being up and a Doomguard potential, the later the game goes, the more likely Doomguard's in the hand.
Yeah, it's
There's
rough.
been so many cards drawn. You had to expect a Doomguard by this late. Apparently no, but I feel like there's more than 15 cards drawn already. And at that point, Doomguard's over, what, I think it's like 75% chance that they would even have a Doomguard right now.
Either way, it's still strong turns for Baylor, who, again, they've got to find a way to push. They've played so conservatively. They're trying to play around Lightning Storm, but again, that's just, it's not where they need to be. I'd love to see the Librarian come down, and I'd love to see the Councilman hit. The fact that Councilman is not instantaneously hitting the board is a bit of a concern for me. This is an incredibly high-profile threat.
So it seems like Baylor's going to prioritize the Knife Juggler damage over the pump from Councilman. That kind of makes sense. There hasn't been any hexes played. That's a premier hex target.
I definitely can see that. I actually kind of like that. Because that ensures the point of damage, which you only need one attack from Councilman, really. One attack from Councilman is usually enough to be the threatening blow here. But Georgia, suddenly it's in an awkward spot. I mean, you can see how tough the matchup is for Shaman if Baylor gets off to a good start.
Yeah. So I actually like Thunder Bluff here over the Azure Drake with Hex. It just has 6 life instead of 4, so it's harder to kill. And next turn, you're still kind of working for AoE to win this game from Georgia's perspective, and you can just either you have one more turn to draw AoE, or you can just play Azure Drake with the AoE next turn.
Oh my. Doomguard is some good. And I don't even, well, they might kill the Thunderbluff now, but I don't know.
See,
no,
I knew
there's no way.
I knew the Doomguards were coming.
They travel in packs, man.
They have to come by now, so.
They travel in packs. Yep. The second Doomguard was definitely the window for them to turn the corner. I think they've had multiple opportunities, but Georgia, they are not winning this game. That is mighty back-to-back draws.
They need a light. I don't even know, actually. I don't think there's any outs.
They need James Franco to be the next card.
Yeah.
I mean,
they need an AoE here, but then there's also a ton they need as well. So
Baylor oftentimes has had a multi-pronged attack, both with the board, with the hand, and with something else. In the Dragon Warrior game, it was with the weapon. In this game, it's with the hero power. Everything has gone in their favor.
Yeah.
And you can see the relief. They can't
out.
believe it. High fives all around. Baylor is going up 3-0 in this event so far, and that is a wonderful feeling. They are now 1 game away from making it to the playoff stage. 1 match away, excuse me.
1 match away. Has to be a good feeling.
Woo, Nelly. I'll tell you what, 10 power of charge in the middle-late stage.
It was their secret 4th member. He's their good luck charm.
It's like, I knew it.
They
They draw those Doomguards. What do you feel like the biggest point in this match was? Because for me, the fact that Georgia played a little bit slow in a couple spots, I think reflected in their game plan overall, where they continued to almost limit themselves. But we saw that a little bit from Baylor as well, who played very conservatively in this 5th game, where I feel like they had multiple opportunities to make pushes.
Yeah, not even just pushes for damage, but just more pushes for board. And you can even see them prioritizing hero power, some like life tap over developing minions sometimes, even with Malkazar's imp up. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely a little bit slow played. But you guys, we want to encourage you to show your school spirit. You can visit us on Facebook, or you can tweet at Team Tespa. Let us know who you're rooting for and what universities you want to see go far in this one. We also want to take this time to thank everyone who's made this possible. We are, of course, powered by Twitch here, but we also want to give a special thanks to Gunner and to Steel Series. Match number 2 is coming up. Don't go anywhere, guys. Our second one of the day is getting underway right after this.